Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
For the identity of the real Marty Levinson, please stay tuned for the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that lemon light city, sweet home Chicago.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at www.ntnm.org. All of our shows are on YouTube, so check it out. Not to mention, we are on weekly for those of you who do ask, because some of you just watch on YouTube. But yeah, if you got a TV, Chicago, Thursday, 7:30, Friday, 2:30, Evanston, Tuesday, 10 o'clock, Thursday, 8 o'clock, and in 35 north and northwest suburbs, we're on Mondays at 6 on either channel 19 or 35, on Comcast and other systems, on AT&T Uverse, it's 99. Jewish Chicago is coming out for around the start of early voting, and I hope you'll participate. Go to our site, ntnm.org, for more details. And speaking of elections and politics and issues, we've got a doubleheader here today. We've got the state senate candidate in the 29th district, Arie Friedman. How you doing?
See you again, Avi.
And the candidate for the House in the 57th district, Jonathan Greenberg. Jonathan, how you doing?
I'm good.
So tell me, you guys are here together. You're campaigning together. You're sharing a campaign, or
No, we have our own campaigns, but we do a lot of stuff together.
yeah? No, well, you're very compatible, and I like you both, and I'd vote for you both if I lived in the neighborhood.
It's not too late to move.
Okay. I can still register in a new district
Yeah,
at
but
this
the
point.
grace period goes until November.
There you go.
Oh, interesting. Oh, you should tell people about voter registration. We haven't even touched the subject on the show yet. People want to go register to vote right now. How do they register and vote?
I think probably the easiest thing to do for most people who use Google searches is simply type in Cook County Clerk or Lake County Clerk, and in both of those sites, it's actually the voter registration information is the front page right now, so it'll give very clear directions.
So you basically share part of a district. Each Senate district is divided into two House districts.
Right.
So you've got a larger district, Arie. You've got half the district, Jonathan.
Yes.
So would you like to give us the areas that you're running in?
So I'm in parts of, but not all of, Northbrook, Glenview, Des Plaines, Mount Prospect, Prospect Heights, Arlington Heights, Wheeling, a little bit of Palatine, Buffalo Grove. And so Arie has all of that, and
Parts of North Chicago, primarily Great Lakes Naval Training Center housing, all of Lake Forest, all of Lake Bluff, all of Highland Park, all of Deerfield, little pieces of some Glencoe, some Riverwoods, a little bit of Lincolnshire, in addition to what Jonathan's running in.
Very good. But we're seen in every single place that your district is in, and we're seen in a few of the places you're in, not quite all. Although through YouTube, satellite, and extraterrestrials, I'm sure we can be seen everywhere.
Okay.
What are the issues in your campaigns?
I think the mess in Springfield is there are a bunch of sub-issues beneath that, but I think the mess in Springfield is of primary importance. I think the pension mess, our Medicaid system, the budget, unpaid bills, and all of that mess that combines to drive jobs out of the state, drive taxes up. I think those are the biggest things affecting the people of Illinois, and people really, it's gotten so bad now that people really get the impact that all of what's going on down in Springfield has on their pocketbooks, has on their families, has on their property values, and I think they're starting to respond to that.
Yeah, people definitely are getting the ideas. As a matter of fact, you can, fire Madigan or
Yeah.
Madagascan? I mean, people are more and more becoming aware of it.
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, we talk about partisan gridlock in Washington, D.C., which is something people talk to me a lot about when I meet them at the doors or talk to them at campaign events. But the reality is here in Illinois, we do not have partisan gridlock. We've had one-party rule in Illinois. Every branch of government, governor, both houses of legislature, and the Supreme Court for 10 years. Furthermore, as you said, Mike Madigan has been the Speaker of the Illinois House since I was in high school.
Wow.
And there's no question that this has been a long-term, ongoing failure. Have Republicans always been great in Springfield? Obviously not. We have the last Republican governor still in prison. But the reality is that the situation in the state was dramatically better 10 years ago. And the significant deterioration of the state's financial situation over the last 10 years, which affects families, businesses, people hoping to have their children come back to Illinois, all of that is affected negatively by what's gone on for the last 10 years.
Right. To that point, 10 years ago, the unfunded portion of our pension liability was about $30 billion. Today, it's well over 85. The number people throw around is $85 billion, but it's a lot more than that. Our bonded debt was about $8 billion, and today it's $30 billion. So just in the last 10 years, with total Democrat control, you've had borrowing and increasing taxes to cover out-of-control spending. And if we don't stop it, taxes are going to keep going up. They're going to dump a bunch of the state pension debt onto property taxpayers, which we have to stop. We're going to all end up paying for it. We have to rein it in.
Yeah, one of the things that I haven't heard from anybody for a while is that when you talk about property tax owners, isn't there a bill somewhere that's going to click in about a year or so that's going to basically give a major increase in property tax to affect the debt?
Well, my opponent is one of the prime sponsors of a bill that would take the teacher portion of state pension obligations and dump it on local school districts. Local school districts are, of course, funded primarily through property taxes. So basically what you're doing when you do that is you're putting all of our houses up as collateral for an insolvent pension system without solving the problem, mind you. They're just dumping about $3 billion of annual pension obligations onto local property taxpayers.
To put another way, what does that do to actually people who live here in Illinois? What it does, it drives them out. Over the last 15 years, an Illinoisan has left this state for greener pastures someplace else, on average, every 10 minutes.
Wow.
Another way to put it is, I remember Paul Simon being elected senator. I actually remember walking down the street on State Street when I was a college student and shaking his hand. He was thanking people for voting for him. The question is, does anybody remember what congressional district he was the congressman for when he became elected senator? It was the 22nd Illinois district. Where's the 22nd district now?
Well, we don't have 22 districts.
It's in Texas, along with the 21st, 20th, and 19th districts, because there's been such a population shift to states that encourage a free market environment where people can build businesses and find jobs.
No, it's true. As a matter of fact, we actually at one time had there were 24 districts once upon a time. I'm older than you. And so we've really shrunk to that point. And as a matter of fact, Roger Keats, who was a Republican candidate for Cook County Board, he actually got so tired of the mess, he moved to Texas.
Roger Keats has a special place in my heart. In 1990, my father ran for the 29th State Senate District as the Democrat running against Roger Keats when he was the state senator. And so, I've certainly got a wide range of opinions in my life talking about where things have been and where they're going. And I think for me, an important bellwether is that my father, who was the Democrat nominee for this Illinois State Senate seat, will no longer call himself a Democrat because of the things that we're talking about. Economic policies that result in poor economic situation for the people who live here, corruption, and just an overall failure of Illinois government has angered him to the point where he will no longer call himself a Democrat.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, once upon a time I used to label myself that, and I don't do that anymore. My property tax is up over 40%. My water bill is almost double. I mean, I could go on and on. Yep. And there's no end in sight to this, and the mess isn't being fixed.
Well, I was a Democrat as recently as 6 years ago. I mean, the breaking point for me, it was a gradual process, but the breaking point for me was in 2006 when Joe Lieberman wasn't enough of a Democrat for the Democrats anymore. And that was kind of my breaking point. But really, for the 5 or 6 years before that, I had started gravitating to the other side. It's
interesting. There was a very good column, and I believe it was in the Washington Post last week, where they were bemoaning the fact that Joe Lieberman is a minority of one in terms of moderation, in the Senate, and what a moderate he was. Not to mention the fact, right as we filmed, there's a God controversy. In 1996, the word God did not exist in the Democratic platform, and he was very objective. He objected very strongly to it, and talked about how you kind of want God on your side, and it would be helpful if you included him in the equation. So no, he's I respect Lieberman tremendously. So there's no question about it. So Forbes magazine rated Illinois 49th in finance a few months ago, and of course we've had our bond rating downgraded since then.
And that's a record. In Governor Quinn's 4 years in office, we have been downgraded 10 times. 10 times. That is the most downgrades that any Illinois governor has experienced and perhaps caused in history.
Yeah, cost is a really good word for it. Does unfortunately there's too much inaction in Springfield beyond belief. So how do you make people? Well, are people starting to be aware of this more? Are you guys obviously part of your jobs are to make people aware of this?
No, but people are aware. People know what's going on. I think and they're upset.
Yeah.
I mean, the question really is, are they going to do something about it? I think that the Tribune, the day after the special session failed in mid-August, ran an editorial that said basically that it was up to the voters now, and it really is. I mean, voters need to make a decision about what kind of state we want to live in, what kind of future we want. And if they want to send the people back down who dug us into the hole, they can do that. If they want to send a new group of leaders to make different decisions and get us out of the mess that we're in, Arie and I are happy to go down and serve.
Oh, that sounds good. Now, how do you see turnout this election? There's a presidential election. Are people in your area excited about the presidential election? Are they going to come out to vote? Isn't it going to carry through in your races?
I mean, my observation is that the primary motivator for turnout is frustration, anger, and fear. I mean, people are terrified right now.
Yeah.
Anytime I have a conversation with a voter, it immediately turns to what their personal economic future holds. And that's in every neighborhood, whether it's in Highland Park or Palatine. People are very worried, not just about whether they can stay here in Illinois, they're worried about their children's futures, and they're worried about the entire country. Now, whether that motivates people to vote for new management in Springfield, for example, which both Jonathan and I believe it will, or to keep doing the same old thing we've always been doing remains to be seen.
Yeah, no, definitely. How are property values in your area right now?
Still going down. I think the last month, I think sale prices, home sale prices went up for the first time in several months. But they're still, property values were down this year. I hear more than anything else at the doors, the complaint that I hear is my property taxes went up even though the assessed value of my house went down. And really, to Arie's point, that's the calamity here. It's taxes are too high. Taxes obviously went up 67% at the beginning of 2011. Taxes are too high. We spend too much money. But the impact that has on the average person, on an average homeowner, is dreadful. We have home values going down, property values still trending down. 1 month doesn't a trend make. We have something like 44% of the homes in Cook County, the mortgages are underwater. We have the worst, we have the highest foreclosure rate in the country here in the Chicago metro area, and one of the highest rates of mortgages underwater in the country. And you add that to an uncertain business environment where we're losing jobs. We'll see what happens this month, but already we've had 4 months in a row now of job loss in Illinois. Last year we had 72,000 jobs lost in Illinois. And you add all of that up, and the economic picture that it paints is dire, and it needs to change.
Yeah, and you talk about property values. I made this point to the realtors who have endorsed my campaign. It's a simple supply and demand curve. The more people who leave Illinois, the fewer people are buying homes, and the value of the homes that are on the market are going to go down. The way to rejuvenate people's equity in their homes in the housing market is for people to come to Illinois. You're never going to accomplish that the way Illinois is right now. I mean, objectively, if you were a startup business looking for a place to have a home, you'd have to work pretty hard to come up with great reasons to come to Illinois from a financial standpoint. Illinois is a great place to live. I live here on purpose.
Yeah.
My family lives here on purpose. And so people would have a natural tendency to want to live near a great city, live near the lake, live on the North Shore. There's great places to live. But it has to be accompanied by the opportunity to prosper. And they won't come here, and you won't get population increase, and you won't get property values rejuvenating, you won't get business rejuvenating until the economic situation and the business environment in Illinois are fixed.
Now, which would be very nice. The fact is, being a walker, I can tell you that almost every other block around here has a house that is vacant, and it's vacant because the mortgage is gone, repossessed, that they just left. Some people just leave the mortgage and all the rest of it. And that depresses the housing market because as you said, there's more houses available. and it just plain doesn't work. What are some of the things that you could do to fix it?
Well, I was just going to
Okay,
say, I think
please, please.
To both of your points, I'm sure Arie sees this too. Walking around neighborhoods, and it's every neighborhood. It's not, blue collar neighborhoods. It's every neighborhood that I walk around. There are houses where they are vacant. There are notices on the door that the water's been turned off. So there are people in all kinds of economic circumstances who are, forced out of their homes by circumstances. And what do you do about it? I mean, the first thing to do is institute pro-growth policies. We're not going to start growing until we start encouraging growth. We've spent the last decade in Springfield discouraging growth, encouraging companies to leave, doing everything that we can to make things harder on companies. We have first of all, there's a bad attitude in Springfield about dealing with businesses. Arie and I are both for sensible regulation, but when regulations exist to punish businesses and not to mitigate problems that businesses have, that's a problem. There are other states that work very well with businesses. When there's a problem, when there's a violation of a regulation, the state works with them to mitigate the violation. Here, we seek to punish and to embarrass.
That's very true, as a matter of fact, and it's not even, nobody's trying to build bridges or hold out their hand. They are punishing, and as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, Governor Walker of Wisconsin actually verbally thanked Illinois for bringing extra business to Wisconsin. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, it's interesting because when Roger Keats, who we mentioned earlier, he was here with Terry O'Brien, and they were talking about how so many companies have gone to this industrial park just over the Wisconsin border. They're within short reach of Illinois. But because of the taxes and regulation and all the rest of it, and business environment, and same's true in Indiana in certain places.
I'll give you another example. Malpractice reform. I'm a pediatrician, so when physicians talk about malpractice reform, they talk about medical malpractice reform. But the reality is that every industry in Illinois is oppressed by being in a judicial hellhole, which is what various counties in Illinois have been called time and time again for good reason. At the Tribune endorsement interview, which we had for our campaign, my opponent flat out came out against malpractice reform in Illinois. Didn't think that we should have any means of making the malpractice burden, again in a state that's been called the judicial hellhole, any lighter on companies. So doctors, companies, construction firms, people wanting to produce new products, all of them think of coming to Illinois as a way of turning themselves into a deep pocket for malpractice lawyers, for trial lawyers. That would be another opportunity to make things better in Illinois. Some reasonable tort reform as has happened in many other states.
No, there's no question about it. The liabilities you can face in business. At one time, I had a larger business, and frankly, I saw the pitfalls I had to encounter. Not all of them were a result of the same kind of things, but when I saw all the problems and the money I'd have to invest, I decided to scale back. And there's several people out there who could have been working for me now who are not working for me.
Look, I think the primary things that you have to do if you're going to fix it, you have to take on pensions, and you have to take on Medicaid. You have to get our spending in those areas down, because businesses aren't stupid. They know exactly where we're coming for that money if we don't fix those programs. Because right now we have ever-increasing revenue, and the only solution that our legislators in Springfield have found is to chase it with ever-increasing taxes. And businesses know exactly where we're coming. We're coming after them. And if we don't solve those two problems, it will, first of all, continue to push all of our other spending out of the budget. We will spend less on education, we'll spend less on human services, as we've done each of the past 4 years. Each of the past 4 years, we've cut the education budget. We've cut human services. And we're going to keep doing that until eventually the entire budget is taken up with pensions and Medicaid and nothing else if we don't reform those two things.
And Jonathan's point needs to be reemphasized. The 3 years with the highest revenue in Illinois, tax revenue, have been the last 3 years. Yep. We do not have a revenue problem in Illinois. That sounds trite, it sounds cliche, but the highest 3 years of revenue in Illinois have been the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. Yet we cut hundreds of millions of dollars from education, from public safety, from human services. Sort of interesting commentary on that is that Illinois is 51st out of 50 in funding disability services, behind even Washington, D.C., in a state that supposedly places the needs of people who are disabled and people who are in difficult economic circumstances high on its list of priorities. And that's, again, because there's only so much money to spend. If you can't control pensions, if you can't control an out-of-control Medicaid, which is health care for the poor, an out-of-control, poorly functioning system so that it does its job right at a reasonable price, then you're not going to have money for anything else.
That's remarkable. That much money. I had no idea that the largest 3 years of revenue, or the last 3 years, and they still can't make ends meet or make a dent.
They raised taxes 67%, and it didn't. We were promised. My opponent specifically promised that the 67% tax increase would bring stability and would pay our bills. Neither of those things happened. We are still totally unstable, and we still have $8.5 billion in unpaid bills.
Yeah, and just in the last week, we got downgraded again.
I think one of the most offensive comments, honestly, as a taxpayer, not necessarily as a candidate, is to hear the supporters of the current pension system in Illinois say, we're the only ones being asked to sacrifice. Right. The reality is that that tax increase we all endured essentially went entirely, the vast majority of it went to pay the last year's pension payment. All of us Illinoisans gave up a week of our life as a further sacrifice to the pension system. So when people talk about shifting some of this burden to people's property tax, which is just a game. Look, we already raised your income tax. We know you're not going to let us do it again, but we figure you're too dumb to realize we're going to raise your property tax instead. The idea that that's actual reform, just raising a different tax on the taxpayer, is, to me, offensive.
Right, you're taking it out of one taxpayer pocket and putting it into another taxpayer pocket. And this is what they do down in Springfield. You take the frog and you put it in a pot of cold water, and then you turn the heat on, and slowly it boils, and the frog doesn't realize it's being boiled. That's exactly what they're doing. First, they were going to phase in the property tax increase over 9 years, and now they're going to phase it in over a few more years, and ultimately it doesn't matter. The frog still ends up boiled.
Yeah, I mean kosher in a lot of ways.
Right.
There you go. Not your pot on.
Right.
No, I have to definitely throw out that. But let me just ask you guys, you want to go another 7-8 minutes here, or you want to wrap things up?
Sure.
Let's go. You know what? We're going to make this the whole show. I'm really enjoying the conversation. So, anyway.
As long as Sonny's okay. If Sonny doesn't have anywhere to be. Right.
Fatigue levels are under control.
Marlene's not coming back from the train till about 4:53, so we're okay.
Okay.
So anyway, keep going. You guys are doing well. Well, okay. In terms of topic, we're talking about property tax, other taxes. One of the things people don't realize too is there are so many hidden taxes in almost anything you do. Take a look at your telephone bill, or the utility bills. I just switched to an alternative energy company, not necessarily a green one, but a cheaper one.
Right.
I know, like 6 months, I'm tied in for 49 cents. So we'll see what actually happens.
Isn't our state gas tax is something around 20 cents a gallon?
It is unbelievable. Well, the gasoline tax,
yeah.
The natural. If people were to see, so a lot of people do budget. They don't really look at their bill. I won't do budget on anything because I want to see every single bill I get every single month. And if I take a look at my phone bill is I pay my company $25.99 a month, which is Vonage. I have an internet phone, unlimited. There's an additional $15 in tax on top of that.
Right.
And that's not exactly what you would call a progressive tax either, because the poorest person is paying the same tax as the wealthiest person in terms of their telephone.
Homeowners should also look at their property tax bills and see the number of taxing agencies that get a bite at that apple. I mean, you've got parks districts, library districts, mosquito abatement districts.
Townships, park districts.
We have the most taxing authorities in Illinois of any state in the union by more than double.
Wow.
We're more than double the number 2 state. And I certainly think that consolidating governments and having fewer taxing agencies is something that we would want to tackle a little further down the road once we get our big problems out of the way.
One of the arguments that's made about these taxing bodies, by the way, is that they're efficient and accountable to the people. I think the accountable part is particularly ridiculous, because I would challenge anybody to name any member of the various school boards in their area, library boards, mosquito abatement districts, sanitary districts, townships, and be able to identify them and then go discuss with them what's going on in that particular township government.
Interestingly enough, and I know more than most people, I would only fit into the sanitary category because I have interviewed those people a lot.
Right.
And those people I know, but the others I have no clue. And I will point out that in Cook County, there were a number of checks for a number of years for the mosquito abatement district that went to full-time checks where workers were being sent to their homes in Florida.
Right. And again, not only do people not know who serve on these taxing bodies and make decisions about money, make real economic decisions for voters, but they don't even know these bodies of government exist. Yeah. I mean, I challenge, again, anybody to tell me, what does a township do? What does a sanitary district do? And how is that different from what you'd expect the county, the city, the park district, the state government to do as well.
People laugh when I say mosquito abatement district. They don't realize that that's something that actually exists. And I'm not saying that what a mosquito abatement district does isn't important. What I'm saying is it's not transparent. If taxpayers and voters don't know about it, then it's obviously not transparent. It's the same problem that we have with a lot of things at the state level. State government is not transparent. Voters need to be able to understand what's going on in state government. And to understand it, they have to be able to see it. And I think one of the things that Arie and I want to do is increase transparency. We want to make things easier for any taxpayer who wants to understand what's going on. We want them to be able to understand it.
I think that would be great, and I think people should understand that. I know both of these guys, and they really are transparent in the right kind of way. Because over here we have a number of politicians in my area who talk about transparency and basically mean we're going to opaque this and black it and shellac it as much as we can and basically fool you until the sun shines and then some.
Right.
So, that's a very important point, and people do have the right to know these things. And why do you have the same agency duplicated in so many places? Not to mention in terms of purchasing. Mm-hmm. If within a county you have each and every single department doing individual purchasing and you were to actually combine the purchasing office in one particular place, you could get a better price by consolidating everything, placing larger orders. And you'd also have more compatibility between departments in terms of...
we have overlapping and redundant state agencies. State
by the way, did you ever hear of the Department of Redundancy Department?
Yeah, it's a problem in Illinois. We have state agencies that have overlapping responsibilities that are bloated, and that certainly contributes to the mismanagement and corruption in the state. Look, if we were serious about downsizing state government, and I'm not talking about downsizing service to constituents and service to taxpayers, I'm talking about downsizing government. Government shouldn't be an employment agency, and it shouldn't be a political machine. It should serve the needs of the taxpayers and no more. And as long as we're able to serve taxpayers, I think looking seriously at making government smaller and more efficient. Every other state in the union went through the reinventing government phase in the 90s. Remember that? Vice President Gore with the pallet of papers on the White House lawn. Every other state, every other city in the country seems to have gone through that. We've had now 4 70s in a row, and we seem to have just jumped over the 90s entirely. And we need a top-to-bottom reinvention of state government. And we're only going to do that when we get people who are fundamentally interested in doing it and prioritizing it. Look, before we do any of that, obviously we have to get our ship in order. But once we've done that, there's a lot more work to be done than just the big stuff.
Yeah, one of the interesting points you make, too, in terms of, even though people think that patronage doesn't really exist anymore in certain ways, a lot of those things are created to get nobody intelligent. But these are designed to make extra jobs for people who work for the various politicians. Who, and by the way, let's also understand that those pensions are going to people who were political workers for the most part.
Some of them, yeah.
So, not all. I don't want to, in terms of police and fire and all the rest of it, I don't want to knock anything along those lines. But in terms of, some of those people were very much patronage workers. So, people have to understand within that context. Look, this is the 1-minute warning now. So let's get your contact information.
So for me, you can find us on the web at www.friedman, F-R-I-E-D-M-A-N, for Senate.com. That's where we live.
And mine is greenberg4staterep.com, Greenberg, staterep.com.
Okay, and I would be very remiss if I didn't mention the fact that, because I got you on both at once, so I'm going to do this now. As publisher of Jewish Chicago, I hereby officially, I'm not going to sprinkle water and baptize you, but I will definitely endorse Senator Arie Friedman in the 29th State Senate District, Jonathan Greenberg in the 57th House District. The same goes for Avi Myers on the show. I'll try to get some phony voter registration in there and vote a few times. And maybe Dick Devine can help me out or whoever else. Sorry, Dick. You never liked when I joked about that. But in any event, I do want to say, I used to say vote early and often to him, and I do it to Anita Alvarez, too. So, but in any event, Arie Friedman, thank you so much. Jonathan Greenberg, thank you so much. I want to especially thank Paulie Miller of the Paulie Group, who brought everybody here today and arranged for everything, who does such a great job. And, he runs a good campaign. I mean, he really knows what he's doing, and I've run into him often. I want to thank my entire technical crew, Sonny Hirsch. I didn't expect we were going to do a whole show together. This started out as a 14-minute idea. Lance Tyson didn't show up, and we just started rolling. So now we got the whole show. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you win the election by a landslide. All the very best.